I have tasted human flesh.
How did human taste?
That's super yummy.
The meat is really soft, like snake or chicken meat. It is really soft meat.
In a corner of the world untouched by time, veiled beneath the thick canopy of the West Papuan jungle, lies a place many dare not enter. A place where the lines between myth and history, between survival and savagery, blur into something primal and terrifying. This is the land of the Bowsy tribe, a people whose past was carved not with ink, but in bone and blood. I came here not to judge, but to understand. We push forward, not toward curated tribal dances, but into a world still pulsing with ancestral echoes. The mission was clear: find the truth, whatever it may be. Our supplies were minimal but essential: water purification tablets, anti-malarial medication, antibiotics. The jungle would provide shelter, but it would also test our resilience at every turn. The jungle here doesn't welcome you, it consumes you. Vines snake up from the earth like tendrils with purpose. Insects descend in swarms, biting through flesh with a hunger you can almost hear. Crocodiles patrol the waters like ghosts of forgotten gods. This land does not tolerate weakness. The humidity is oppressive, a physical weight that presses against your lungs with each breath. By mid-morning, clothing clings to skin, permanently damp. Fungi grow on equipment left unattended for even a single night. In these conditions, the human body becomes both vulnerable and remarkably adaptive. The Bowsy have inhabited these highlands for thousands of years. We were joined by Dami, a fixer born of the jungle, a bridge between the ancient and the modern. His lineage ran deep into the shadows of Papua's darker history. His father, he told us without hesitation, was a cannibal. Not metaphorically, a literal hunter of human flesh, and he said it not with shame, but with a kind of reverence, a cultural truth passed down like a family name. Dami's weathered face tells its own story. Scars from tribal initiations intersect with the modern lines of age. He wears Western clothes when in town, but here, in the forest, he strips down to traditional garb, his body adorned with patterns that signify his family lineage, his hunting prowess, his place within the tribe's complex social hierarchy. When you eat the enemy, Dami explains, tapping his chest, you take their strength. Their spirit doesn't haunt you, it joins you, becomes you. This wasn't simply protein acquisition, it was spiritual technology, a way of literally absorbing power from those who threatened your existence. The Bowsy and other highland tribes once lived in near constant tribal warfare, where old grudges became inherited destinies. Generations grew up knowing who their enemies were, even if they'd never seen them. The price of forgetting those rivalries: vulnerability, death, extinction. The valleys and ridges of West Papua formed natural boundaries between tribal territories. Each group developed distinct languages, customs, and spiritual beliefs, sometimes radically different from neighbors living just miles away. These differences became the fuel for conflicts that lasted centuries. Their warfare wasn't merely chaotic violence, it followed strict cultural codes. Battles often began with elaborate rituals, with warriors spending days preparing their bodies with special paints derived from local minerals and plants. Some conflicts were scheduled like sporting events, with neutral zones established for trade even during active hostilities. And so they fought, they hunted, and yes, they ate. When resources grew scarce during prolonged droughts, when protein became precious, enemy flesh wasn't just symbolic victory, it was sustenance. The human body became another resource in an environment where nothing could be wasted. By the 1980s, much of this had begun to fade. Some were killed and eaten, not in cruelty, but curiosity. A tragic clash of two worlds too distant to understand each other. And decades later, the descendants of those acts now offer apologies to families they never knew. They are haunted by the sins of their fathers, even as they try to step into a new future. In one village, we meet an elderly chief who remembers those early encounters. "We didn't know they were people like us," he says through Dami's translation. "They looked like spirits with their white skin and strange eyes. We thought eating them would give us their magic." His eyes, clouded now with cataracts, still reflect the wonder of those first meetings, and the regret that followed. As we trekked deeper inland, guided by locals whose appearance shifted seamlessly between the ancient and the modern, solar panels power lights in communities with no running water. Satellite dishes rise among traditional homes built from forest materials. Children learn tribal hunting techniques in the morning and English vocabulary in the afternoon. This is not simple assimilation, it's a complex negotiation between worlds. Papua is home to one of the most linguistically diverse regions on Earth. On this island alone, nearly 1,000 distinct languages are spoken, many by only a few hundred people. Each tongue carries stories, legends, and truths that may never be translated. Every passing generation risks losing another voice, another worldview, and the clock is ticking. My grandchildren speak Indonesian and some English, an elderly woman tells us, her face a canvas of traditional tattoos. They understand our language but rarely speak it. When I die, who will remember the old songs? Who will know the names of all the sacred places? Her question hangs in the air, unanswered. Some knowledge is considered sacred, not meant for outsiders. The dilemma is profound. Share and risk cultural appropriation, or keep silent and risk total erasure. We camped on the edge of crocodile-infested waters, the line between predator and prey blurred by moonlight. Dammy showed us how to construct elevated sleeping platforms, raising us just enough above the ground to avoid the nocturnal predators that emerge at dusk. He demonstrated how to identify which waters are safe to cross and which harbor unseen dangers. Knowledge passed down through generations, refined through blood and loss. You must always listen, he instructed. The jungle speaks. When birds go quiet, something is coming. When insects scream, rain approaches. When the air smells, danger is near. This sensory intelligence, this deep literacy of the natural world, represents a form of wisdom largely lost to modern humanity. But amidst this deadly paradise, something beautiful persisted, the rhythm of survival. The Bowsy hunt wallaby, cuscus, and even kangaroo with dogs and spears. They do not hunt for sport, they do not waste. The forest gives and they take, with caution, with skill, with respect. Women gather edible plants with equal precision. They teach their children through constant observation and supervised practice, a pedagogy of place that connects each generation to the land in ways no classroom could replicate. He wasn't even trying to shock. He was recalling something passed down through bloodlines, a taste remembered through stories, through legacy. He spoke with the matter-of-factness of someone describing any local cuisine. There was no performative savagery, no attempt to frighten or impress. It was simply knowledge, passed from father to son, as ordinary to him as recipes shared in family kitchens around the world. And he spoke of dreams of one day traveling to Africa, not for adventure, not for tourism, but to once again taste what his father knew, to compare the myths in his blood with the flesh of another. It was a thought that disturbed and fascinated all at once. This wasn't horror, it was heritage, unfiltered. Malaria, snake bites, falling trees, all more likely to kill than any war now. Most deaths are not from tribal enemies, but from the jungle itself. We joined a hunting party at dawn, moving through the forest with a quietness that seemed supernatural to outsiders. The Bowsy hunters communicated with subtle hand gestures, with mimicked bird calls, with expressions so slight they were barely perceptible. Their awareness of their surroundings was total, a full-body intelligence that no technology could replicate. We participated in cooking methods unchanged for millennia earth ovens where food steams between hot stones, wrapped in specific leaves that impart unique flavors. The women showed us how they prepare sago palm, the staple carbohydrate, through an elaborate process of extraction and fermentation. At night, stories were shared, myths of creation, legends of tribal heroes, tales of ancient battles. Papua is not a place for easy answers. It is a place of contradictions. What I found wasn't horror. It was humanity, in its most unfiltered, unrefined, and honest form, and of the jungle that watches it all, ancient and unblinking. As we departed, Dami placed a hand on my shoulder, and in that moment I knew that despite all our footage, all our interviews, all our careful observations, we had only scratched the surface of a world that defies simple documentation. Where the impossible is daily reality, where humanity continues to write its complex story in one of the last wild places on Earth. We came to hunt. First, through the jungle's heart, where centuries-old trees formed cathedrals of green and brown. The effort proved fruitless. Sweat dripped in rivulets down our backs, mosquitoes feasted on exposed flesh, and the dense canopy swallowed our sounds like a living entity. The forest floor, a treacherous carpet of rotting vegetation, sucked at our boots with each step. A ripple, a subtle wake, the slight disturbance of water that betrays intention. Our guide ready to spear, a crude weapon by modern standards, yet lethal in the right hands. The shaft, polished smooth by generations of use, felt like a throwback to times when man lived by tooth and claw, when survival wasn't guaranteed by technology but earned through skill and courage. The water churned with renewed violence. Lightning split the sky, nature had spoken, and only fools would ignore her warning. We returned to camp, empty-handed, soaked to the bone, and with one less brother by our side. Tomas hadn't been taken by beast or bullet. He had collapsed miles back, his body surrendering to the fever that had been building for days. The jungle's invisible killers, parasites and pathogens had claimed him, forcing a hasty evacuation that sapped our already dwindling strength. In the jungle, every loss is permanent. The forest doesn't offer do-overs or second chances. It takes without sentiment and gives only to those who understand its brutal language. As night fell over our makeshift camp, nothing more than tarpaulins stretched between trees and hammocks hung with desperate hope, we were forced to make impossible choices that outsiders would never comprehend. Heatstroke from staying covered or facing the elements and the creatures that hunted within them. Boots ruined beyond repair, and hope fraying with each passing hour. The air was thick with mist, the kind that blurs the line between dream and nightmare, between reality and hallucination. Our dogs, lean, scarred veterans of countless hunts, whimpered restlessly in the dark, sensing things our human senses couldn't detect. Even they, creatures born to this environment, hadn't slept. Their vigilance spoke volumes about what lurked beyond our feeble light. Morning arrived like a reluctant whisper, gray, damp, and utterly indifferent to our suffering. And sometimes punishment wasn't exile or imprisonment, it was consumption, the ultimate erasure. Like smoke that never quite clears from a closed room, his laughter carried no regret, no shame, only the wisdom of someone who had witnessed the pendulum of history swing within a single lifetime. Now everybody Christian, he said, tapping a small wooden cross that hung from his neck. Pray on Sunday, no more old ways. He paused, then added with a smile that revealed surprisingly strong teeth. Most time. Dinner was simple. Fish cooked over open flame, its skin blackened and crisp. Rice, a trade item from coastal villages, steamed in battered metal pots. Some laughter as the day's mishaps were recounted. Some reflection on what tomorrow might bring. Then more stories, this time from the youngest of the elders, a man perhaps in his 60s with clouded eyes but perfect recall. Stories from those who had, in their youth, tasted human flesh. Not like pig, he said simply when asked about the flavor, more like deer, but different. He spoke without emotion, without sensationalism, just answering a question about something that was, for him, historical fact rather than taboo. They said it wasn't about hunger. It wasn't desperation or starvation that drove the practice. It was about dominance, about belief systems as complex as any world religion, about bridging the gap between life and death, between enemy and self, between defeat and victory. But not anymore. Now, they eat pigs, fish, cassava grown in small clearings hacked from the unyielding jungle. And yet, as I watched the firelight play across their faces, I couldn't help but wonder, do the spirits of the forest ever miss the old ways? Under a night sky, thick with mosquitoes that danced in clouds around our headlamps, we tried to sleep in hammocks strung between trees. Tomorrow would bring another hunt, another risk, another journey deeper into the beating heart of one of Earth's last untamed places, a heart that pumps not blood but memory through ancient roots and vines. This is more than a documentary about exotic practices in foreign lands. This is a confrontation with the primal, both around us and within us, that modern society has tried so hard to bury beneath concrete and convenience. This is the jungle, and it remembers what we've forgotten. I came here chasing stories. Stories of a people whose customs once included the unimaginable. Cannibalism not as abstract anthropological concept, but as lived practice. Tribal warfare conducted not with political maneuvering but with spears and arrows tipped with poison harvested from toxic frogs. And the primal rhythm of life dictated not by clocks and calendars but by hunger, land, and legacy. The elders speak of a time when the rules were different, when the law was written not in books but in blood and bone, when retribution came with a spear thrust rather than a court summons, when enemies weren't just defeated or imprisoned, they were devoured, consumed entirely, not for pleasure or cruelty as outsiders might assume, but for survival in its broadest sense, and for symbolism deeper than words can capture. To consume the strength of the fallen was to prevent it from rising against you again. In those days, justice wasn't measured in years served or fines paid, it was measured in flesh and fear. My grandfather, one man told me as we sat beneath a tree whose trunk was wider than a car, he kills 6 men from mountain tribe. They come for our women. He stopped them. His chest swelled with pride at the memory. Then he eat their hearts, take their strength. Now they protect him, not fight him. The tribe remembers these stories, not with pride in the modern sense, not with shame or embarrassment at practices now condemned by outside society, simply as truth, as history, as the way things were before the world changed around them. Most can't tell you their age with any precision. Time here is not counted in years on a calendar but in stories, in seasons of hunting and harvest, in the births and deaths that punctuate tribal memory. One man, wrinkled, leather-skinned, with eyes like scorched coals that had seen generations come and go, told me he had seen outsiders before he even knew what the word meant. Chinese traders who came looking for bird-of-paradise feathers and exotic woods, Spanish treasure seekers drawn by rumors of gold and mountain streams, missionaries cloaked in the name of God, bringing Bibles and diseases in equal measure. He was just a boy then, he said, wide-eyed, watching men with pale faces carve up the jungle with greed disguised as progress or salvation. They bring good things, he acknowledged, holding up a machete with a plastic handle, his most prized possession. But take more than they give. But ask him if he'd ever leave this life, this hardship, this constant struggle against nature's indifference, for the comforts of the city? The answer comes without hesitation. Never. The forest is his cathedral, its canopy his roof, its floor his foundation. The soil, rich with decomposing matter that feeds the next generation of growth, is his sustenance and security. The jungle is not a place to escape, not an obstacle to overcome. It is home, complete, demanding, alive in ways that concrete could never be. Technology trickles in slowly here, like water finding cracks in a dam. Cell phones, usually older models charged by solar panels when available or carried to distant villages with electricity when necessary, light up the night like artificial fireflies. Their use sparingly precious windows to an outside world that simultaneously fascinates and terrifies. But TikTok, Instagram, Netflix, these words mean nothing here. The biggest changes in living memory aren't digital but fundamental. Roads that now extend where only trails existed before. Shoes that protect feet once toughened by direct contact with the earth. Radios that bring news from beyond the green horizon. Christianity that has supplanted ancient spirits with a single God. They watch as the modern world creeps ever closer, year by year, mile by mile, whispering promises of easier lives and threats to everything they've known. Some embrace it with the adaptability that has kept their people alive for millennia. Others resist, retreating deeper into shrinking territories. But all feel the shift, the tremors of change that shake foundations laid by ancestors whose names are still spoken with reverence around evening fires. Manhood, for instance, doesn't come with a numerical age or a certificate. It doesn't arrive on a predetermined birthday or after completing an education. It comes with endurance. With proving yourself in the unforgiving crucible of jungle life. With bringing meat back to the village, with building a hut that withstands the monsoon, with showing wisdom in tribal matters. Boys become men here at around 25 years of age, not when a calendar dictates, but when they can hunt effectively, defend their family, and lead by example rather than words. Sex education isn't theoretical or classroom-based, but practical and observational. There is no privacy in dwellings where entire families share a single room. Children learn by watching, by absorbing the rhythms of adult life that play out around them from birth. Condoms? Rare luxuries brought by health workers who visit occasionally, speaking of diseases that many here don't fully comprehend. Life is made, not planned. Children arrive as the forest allows, as bodies and fate determine. Some women have 5, others 20. They count with their fingers, with glances toward the laughing barefoot children climbing trees and chasing chickens through the mud. They are wealth, one mother told me. Her face aged beyond her years, but her eyes bright with maternal pride. More children, more hands, more food. When I asked about homosexuality, carefully through a translator who hesitated to even pose the question, the response chilled me to my core. A silence fell over the group. Then laughter, awkward, nervous, edged with cruelty. In this world, being gay isn't just socially unacceptable or morally questionable. It's a death sentence, pronounced not by courts but by the community itself. Shame to the family, the eldest man said flatly, his expression hardening. We would kill him. And they mean it, not as theoretical posturing but as established protocol. Their morality is not abstract or philosophical, it is tribal, rooted in continuity, in land rights, in lineage that must continue at all costs. Progress, in the Western sense of expanding rights and recognizing individual identity, is a foreign language here, unintelligible and unwelcome. Love, in all its forms, is filtered through the prism of survival. Anything that doesn't contribute to the tribe's continuation is viewed with suspicion or hostility. And yet, despite what outsiders might see as harshness or primitivity, they smile, they laugh, they love with an intensity that belies their difficult circumstances. A man brings meat to his wife not like a paycheck but like a bouquet, a tangible proof of his devotion and capability. They joke about sex with a candor and mischief that would make many civilized people blush. From the front or from behind? I asked one man about his favorite technique, through a translator who struggled to maintain a professional demeanor. The man grinned like a teenager catching his first glimpse of forbidden fruit. From behind, he said without hesitation, pantomiming the position with crude but unmistakable gestures. Then, surprisingly, his expression softened. Lock eyes over shoulder, deep love. It's raw, it's real, it's unfiltered humanity, stripped of the sanitized layers that modern society wraps around our most basic instincts. Polygamy is common here, not as a religious dictate or moral failing as some outsiders might judge it, but as a practical arrangement born of necessity and tradition. Papua is a big island, one man chuckled when asked why he had 3 wives. We need more generations, more Papuans, so we marry more women. Each marriage is more than a romantic union. It's an alliance between families, a merging of resources and responsibilities. Each child born is not just a blessing but an investment in survival. Another set of hands to work the land. Another carrier of tribal knowledge for the next generation. This is not romance as Hollywood portrays it. This is continuation, the unbroken chain of human existence in one of Earth's most challenging environments. They mine gold in distant mountains, not with industrial equipment or corporate backing, but with hands blistered by labor and primitive tools fashioned from whatever materials are available. They walk 3 days through unforgiving terrain, from mine to village, to bring home what little they find. Gold dust that catches the light like captured stars, tiny nuggets pried from stubborn earth. Some return with enough to trade for essentials at distant markets. Others with nothing but sweat and aching bones and stories of near misses with death. There is no steady paycheck here, no guaranteed return on investment. Success depends on luck as much as skill, on the forest's momentary generosity. Malaria is not a distant threat but a regular visitor to these villages, a familiar enemy that claims the young and old with grim regularity. Sickness is not an inconvenience but a reality that shapes daily decisions. Death is not a stranger but an accepted companion on life's journey, present at every hunt, every birth, every moment of potential danger. Yet joy persists through it all, stubborn as the jungle vines that reclaim every cleared space. They dance, bodies moving to rhythms beaten on drums made of hollowed logs and stretched lizard skin. They sing, voices carrying stories of ancestors and spirits into the humid air. They gather by fires as darkness falls, telling tales that link present to past, visible world to invisible realm. Cannibalism, though faded from active practice due to government prohibition and missionary influence, still lingers in memory, not as distant legend but as lived experience for the oldest among them. Some recall it with clarity that makes your skin crawl, who they ate, and why, described in the same tone one might use to recount yesterday's breakfast. But others speak of restraint that challenges Western stereotypes. Not all tribes consumed their enemies, they explain. Some chose mercy when victory was absolute. Some buried the fallen with respect. A complex moral code existed, deeply misunderstood by the outside world that reduced rich cultural traditions to sensationalist headlines. My people, said one elder whose father had participated in ritual cannibalism, only eat enemy who kill our children. Not all enemies, only worst ones. He described it as proportional justice, punishment fitting the crime in a world without prisons or courts. We not animals, he added with surprising dignity. We have rules. When asked about white people, about their perceptions of the outsiders who come with cameras and questions and preconceptions, the answers were mixed, reflecting the complexity of a relationship built on centuries of unequal power. Curiosity about our ways, distrust born from historical exploitation, fascination with our technologies and comforts. Would they let their daughter marry one? The question prompted serious consideration rather than immediate rejection. Maybe, maybe not. It depends, they said, on heart, on respect, on willingness to honor tribal ways rather than impose foreign values. But amid all the contradictions, modernity versus tradition, violence versus tenderness, past versus future, one thing rang clear through every conversation, every shared meal, every moment spent in their company: happiness. Not the fleeting, consumption-based happiness that dominates Western society, but something deeper and more durable. Are you happy? I asked a man who had shown me his village, his hunting grounds, his family, who had by any material standard almost nothing that modern society values. The man looked around at his modest dwelling, at his children playing in mud puddles, at his jungle, his pigs, his simple life, and he smiled, a smile uncomplicated by the 1,000 anxieties that plague supposedly advanced societies. Yes, he said, I am. And in that moment, surrounded by what many would call poverty and hardship, it all made sense. Not because I understood their way of life, I didn't and never fully could, but because I understood that they did. They inhabited their reality completely, without the constant comparison and dissatisfaction that characterizes modern existence. They didn't need our validation, our shock, our approval, our pity. They just needed their land, their gods, their people. That was enough, had always been enough since time immemorial. As I left the jungle, trekking back toward what we call civilization, my body bore the marks of the wild. Bug bites that would take weeks to heal, lingering fever from unknown sources, physical exhaustion that seeped into my bones. My mind, though, carried something deeper. Questions about what we've lost in our rush toward progress. Awe at the resilience of the human spirit. Respect for ways of knowing and being that have survived despite every pressure to conform to global standards. And perhaps a truth we often forget in our air-conditioned, algorithmically optimized existences, that civilization is not always progress, and wildness is not always ignorance. Sometimes, to understand humanity in its fullest sense, you must walk barefoot into the forest, sit with a man who doesn't know his age, but knows every plant within miles, and simply listen. Because buried in the dirt of Papua New Guinea, beneath layers of colonial history, religious conversion, and technological encroachment, is the echo of who we all once were. A reminder of the adaptability, the tenacity, and the raw humanity that allowed our species to spread across every hostile corner of this planet long before we built skyscrapers or sent signals bouncing off satellites. The jungle remembers, even when we forget. And it will be here long after our modern certainties crumble to dust. As we leave the village, the jungle quickly reclaims its secrets beneath endless green. The Bowsy become smaller figures, then mere specks, then vanish entirely beneath the canopy that has sheltered them for millennia. What remains with me isn't the sensationalism of their past practices, but the profound resilience of a people standing at the crossroads of history. They inhabit a world where smartphones illuminate faces still adorned with traditional markings, where ancient hunting techniques coexist with modern medicine, where the past and future negotiate their uneasy peace daily. The Western world often views such communities through a lens of either primitive savagery or romanticized, noble simplicity. Both perspectives miss the fundamental truth I discovered. The Bowsy are neither monsters nor mystical beings. They are humans navigating survival with the tools their environment and history provided. Their story isn't about cannibalism, though that practice defined them to outsiders. It's about adaptation, about holding on to cultural identity while selectively embracing change. About finding balance in a world increasingly hostile to ancient ways of being. As we race toward a homogenized global culture, something irreplaceable disappears with each language lost, each tradition abandoned, each elder who passes without transmitting knowledge. The Bowsy remind us that human diversity, not just biological but cultural, represents our species' greatest adaptation strategy. Their journey forward isn't guaranteed. Development threatens their lands. Outside values challenge their traditions. Children look increasingly outward rather than to their elders for guidance. Yet something in their spirit persists, something unbowed, unbroken by centuries of change. A determination not merely to survive but to survive as themselves, carrying forward an identity carved from the forest itself. The shadows of Papua hold no easy answers, only questions about who we are, who we've been, and who we might yet become. Thanks for traveling with us. Wherever you are in the world, remember, home isn't just a place, it's a perspective. We'll see you in the next story only on Beyond Borders. Hit subscribe, share the story, stay curious.